We record the PC Mastermind and the weekly workshop for the purpose of rewatching, or if you are absolutely not able to attend due to another job. But we prefer that you be here in person because you're going to get so much more out of it. That's why we actually recently, or a few months ago, moved it to the lunch hour to help everyone be able to be here. So just so that, and then also one other reminder, since we have a couple new ones on here, in our mastermind, we talk about things that are really going to move business forward. So this isn't like ask a coach type questions, okay? We have ask a coach every day for that. If there's ever time at the end and you have a quick question, I'm happy to answer it, but we want to make sure we keep this discussion moving forward. Okay. If we can turn cameras on, I would appreciate that. We want to see your smiling faces.
Jodi, may I ask you a question, please?
Okay.
I apologize. I have to leave at 12:20 due to an emergency dental appointment. And I do have a question uh, in regards to moving my business forward. Um, I am working with a lovely family, and they intend on renting for a year or two. And in my personal opinion, it doesn't make sense in their situation. Husband in the military, could qualify for VA loan, etc. I don't want to overstep my boundaries. How would you weave that into the conversation just to make them consider buying instead of renting? Thank you.
Good question. And remember, we don't always know all the circumstances, and our opinion doesn't matter. What matters is theirs and what they need. That's part of being the fiduciary, right? Now, that being said, that doesn't mean what you're thinking isn't correct for them. So, what I would encourage is to do a buyer consultation, ask the questions, really get to know what's the reason, right? What is the reason behind? Because maybe there's some fear about losing money. Maybe there's some fear about around they won't be in the house long enough to gain enough equity to turn around and sell it. So really figure out what their reasons are, and then have a discussion with them about the financial possibilities of purchasing versus renting and the gains there, right? And then also refer them to a lender to further that financial conversation so they can make an informed, educated decision. Great question, though. Okay. All right. Again, I'm going to ask that cameras be on if at all possible. We realize once in a while there's an extenuating circumstance, but please know that this is we're here to focus and pay attention. And so when we see faces, we know that's happening. At least it's supposed to be happening that way. Okay. All right, I am going to go ahead and get started. We have quite a few things to cover today. And one second. Okay. And you can always go back and refer to the recording. Now, I don't want to spend our entire time on this topic because there's a lot of other valuable things we can talk about, but there's parts of the topic that we're going to talk about today that we can start weaving into your businesses to really make sure that you are set up for success, not only in July, but for the future. Okay. So, I don't want to, so essentially, the topic that we're going to cover today, I think I put it out there, is the NAR settlement, what it means, what it doesn't mean, what you should be doing, and what you should not be doing. Okay. And we're going to talk about it in regard to, we'll give you the facts as we know them. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it itself, okay? Because it itself currently is noise that is keeping people from doing their business. As of today, we are still doing business as usual. Nothing has changed, Okay. And I want to make sure everybody fully understands that. Now, everyone's market centers, I'm sure the brokers are all bringing you things. Everybody should be bringing you things. So I've put together some slides, some because I screenshot them from CB and Troy slides yesterday in our market center, and a couple that I created. So we're going to go through the nuts and bolts of it quickly. You can ask questions, but then we're going to talk about how you can today start improving your own value and your conversations with your buyers such that when and if this becomes a thing, you'll be absolutely ready. And in the meantime, you'll be bringing great value to your clients. Sound like a good way to approach this? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share screen here. If you have questions, please put them in the chat because I don't want to go back and forth into the chat while I'm doing this presentation, okay? Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk about what you need to know, what you need to do, and not do, okay? Some of the information I'm bringing you, I've been on KW leadership webinars. I have been on with some brokers in some things. So the things we're bringing you are very important. Okay, here is the nuts and bolts of the settlement. Okay, so first of all, this is absolutely wonderful news. Buyer representation agreements, if this passes and is approved by the judge in July, remember, none of this is approved yet. This is just the proposed settlement. If this passes in July, and this piece I surely hope does, the buyer representation agreements will be required. You may not open a door, not even one, for a buyer without an agreement, nor should you now. We've always coached to this, okay? So what this means is now we're all going to be being the professionals that we should be, okay? So the second thing is offers of cooperative compensation cannot be made on the MLS. So currently, when you go onto the MLS, we have to put in there how much the buyer side is being offered. If this gets approved, that will no longer be allowed. That will not be allowed on the MLS, which is interesting because we will be able to then negotiate this as part of the purchase agreement, which we currently are not allowed to do. It's an ethical violation currently. So that's kind of interesting how that may change. What we are allowed to do, or will be allowed to do if this passes, and is this the second part, is we can put what is being offered to the buyer on our own websites. So we can talk about it within our own market centers. So actually that could really be a plus because Keller Williams in most of the market centers is the top brokerage. If they're not number one, they're number two. They have a large portion of the market share in each of the market centers. So that's really good news that we would be able to do that. Okay. The seller can offer concessions to the buyer in the public field of the MLS, which again would be a huge change. However, it cannot be conditioned that it's paid to the buyer's agent. Okay, so they can offer like a closing cost, and then the buyer and the agent can figure out how that will be used. We'll explain more of that later and when it becomes a thing. I just mentioned this. Offers of cooperative compensation may be made off the MLS. So we can do it almost anywhere except the MLS, okay, within our own websites and things. Let's see. An MLS, I mentioned this already, can no longer require agents to make or accept offers of cooperative compensation, which they currently do. Okay. Brokerages can publish offers of cooperative compensation for their own listings on their own website. So that means essentially not just you as an agent on your website, but Keller Williams, the market center, can do that as well. And there was talk yesterday or Monday in the leadership call that because Keller Williams owns our software, the command, it's proprietary to we own it. That's going to be huge for the company as a whole because we have a huge company that we can market that to and stay within the rules that are proposed. Okay. So the other thing is agents must make commission disclosures. So agents must disclose in listing agreements, buyer representation agreements, anything that they're doing, that broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Guess what? That's no change. They always have been negotiable and not set by law. But this has to be made crystal clear moving forward. Okay, so a little joke here. Anybody get this? Just to take a little bit of the whatever away from this. This 3-bedroom home will be perfect for you as it has recently 3% been updated. Anyway, just a little humor. This is meant for humor only. Okay, you can't do stuff like that. Okay, so starting now, you really need to determine your value proposition. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes. Practice, 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 and practice some more your conversations. This has always been one of the most important pieces of our job, one of the top 5 pieces of our job description, and it will be ever more important moving forward. Okay, become laser focused on getting listings. He who has the listings wins, right? So if you're a list agent, none of this is an issue. If you're a listing agent, learn to do high level open houses. I'm going to talk in a minute why that is going to be so important. You are going to want to be a list agent and you are going to want to dominate being a master of open houses. Okay. Your coaches, your market centers, Keller Williams, we're all going to be working very hard to ensure that you have all of the tools that you need to be successful as we navigate some future potential changes. And remember, the market center or the market center, the real estate industry has made changes all along. It was, I'm trying to remember what year it was. I think it was 1992. Don't quote me. That the buyers even were able to have representation. So, and it was a huge change when that happened. We had a huge change when we had to learn how to do short sales, if those of you know what that is, right? So change is inevitable. That's the one certainty. And we just learn to roll with it. Okay. So the bottom line is this is actually good news, right? Because all agents will be required to be the professionals that they should be. Remember, nothing is decided yet. A judge has to sign off. So this is business as usual as of today, with the exception of honing our skills. Even better, right? We have plenty of time to prepare if this does get put in place. And your coaches, like I mentioned, are here to guide you through this. So there is absolutely nothing to fear. Lastly, before I undo the slides, I want you to use the QR code. And there are 3 classes left. Your coaches are intending, if I can reschedule one thing, to be in Tuesday's class, the 26th. Otherwise, we have April 10th, and there's another one that I don't remember the date. There are 3 of these classes left that Gary Keller himself, Jason Abrams, and Jay Papazan are putting on, that are going to help us really be able to hone in on our values and how to talk to our clients. We want everyone taking this class. It's called Value Squared. And it is going to be, I know a couple of you have already taken it. I also found out Monday that the next class, the second class, is going to be different from the first class. So you might retake it. As things are happening, they are evolving this class. Okay, so please use the QR code right now, register for one of them, and please adjust your schedules to be able to make at least one of these classes. So that's what we're going to be addressing, not the changes, right? We wanted to make you aware just because we want the noise to go away. Here's the thing, guys. You're going to see so much on social media. You're going to hear all kinds of stuff about this. Don't read it. Shut it down. Okay? The other thing that in Monday's call that they really want us to emphasize is to fight the urge to start talking about this and start telling everybody about this. We just simply don't know enough, and we won't until July. Okay? However, you may be asked questions from people. Okay? So if you get asked questions, you just need to simply say, you know what? There is so much information in the news, and what you need to understand is that much of it is misinformation. There has already been, literally, there has already been a lot of misinformation. The New York Times said that we price fixed our fees at 6%. That is a lie. That has never happened. So they've already had to come out with adjustments and retraction. I don't know if they've made a retraction or not, but NAR and different ones have had to come out with statements. So here's the thing. You need to let anyone who asks you know that you understand there's a lot of noise in the news right now. Much of the news is misinformation, and you, as their trusted professional, will keep them up to date and let them know what they need to know when we know it. And the truth is, business as usual, and we know nothing before July. And keep it simple. Okay, don't overthink it, don't overtalk it, and really, you don't need to bring it up because nothing is going to change before July if it changes then. Okay. So that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about that. So and I will give you a chance to ask some questions right now for a couple minutes, and then we're going to put this to bed because it's noise keeping us from doing our job. But what was said is important to know. So do you have any questions before we move on? No? Okay, great. Okay.
Yes, I do. I do have a question. Just to clear out, um, the settlement was discussed and they didn't take any resolutions. And so the NAR presented this um, these ways to approach or uh, to resolve this settlement, and these are going to be resolved on July.
So NAR has proposed a settlement to the lawsuit, and we will know nothing more until July. A judge will rule on whether they will accept, adjust, amend, or not accept the settlement.
Okay.
So again, there's a settlement on the table, and nothing else will be known before July.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, so what this means is we really need to know our value proposition. So if somebody asked you today, what is your value proposition as a realtor? Would you be able to articulate that in 60 seconds or less
Yep.
without sounding like a used car salesman? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing you some information about value propositions, okay, to help you create your own value proposition. But you need to be able to know your value and what it is that you should be doing. So please know that over the next few weeks, your coaches, the market centers, KW, we're going to be preparing material to bring to you. Okay, because we want you to feel confident talking to people. And the good news is with the buyer representation potentially being required, right? you're going to have to learn that conversation. And you're not going to have to worry about asking somebody to sign because they'll go down the street to somebody that won't sign it or won't make them sign it, right? Because everybody will have to. So I really think that's great news. But I'm going to pivot to something right now that I mentioned earlier. There's two things I really want you to be focused on. Listings. Remember, what we focus on expands. So focus on getting listings. Buyers are going to come because of that. Buyers are always going to come. You don't need to focus on getting buyers. You need to focus on getting listings. Okay? That means in your conversations, you should be asking people who they know that's thinking about selling their home. Right? And ask them who they think is, who they know that they think is going to be selling their home in the next year, right? Don't say today or tomorrow. Don't box their mind in, right? Because people think about what we tell them to think about. So who do you know that's thinking about selling their home in the next year? Or who do you know who's going to have a major life event, getting married, have a baby, retiring, moving to a new area? What major life event? Who had a death in the family, a divorce? I know those things are no fun to talk about. And the people that have those things happen often have to sell a house. And while we don't want to seem like ambulance chasers, right? We also, if we're being a fiduciary, we don't want some unscrupulous agent helping somebody who's already been through something tragic. We as a fiduciary want to be the ones to help them through that in a way that will be good for them. Okay. So being listing focused is super important. So we have to change our conversations, change the things that we're talking about. Okay. We shouldn't even be thinking about buyers as far as our conversations. They're going to come regardless. And guess what? If you ask somebody who they know who's thinking about selling a house in the next year and they don't know of somebody, but they do know of somebody who wants to buy, they're going to tell you. Okay. So you don't have to be afraid of that. Okay. So I'm glad, welcome to the ones that came on here a little late, and I'm glad that you did. We have already covered a large piece of this. Please, when we post this, go back and watch the beginning. Some really good information. Okay. But we're really getting into the nuts and bolts. So the other thing that I want you guys to be really focused on, and I'm going to be putting together a certification program for you guys to do this, is becoming masters of open houses. Now, can anybody think about why focusing on listings and becoming masters of open houses moving forward will be the best way to keep your business going and growing?
You're gonna automatically get the buyers.
Okay, that's kind of what happens now, right? Why moving forward do you think this is going to be even more important?
To secure more listings.
Well, yes, we want more listings.
No, there's gonna be a lot of agents that aren't good at negotiating and able to acquire the buyers, and the information's out there where people don't think they need to get one.
Yes, that you're on the right track there. So what's going to happen is, how many of you have a buyer that you spent time with and then they never want to write an offer, or they never want to write a reasonable offer, or they're not even ready to look at property now? They've kind of backed up. Anybody working with some of those? Everybody's had those, right? So those types of buyers aren't going to sign your agreement. They're not going to be ready to sign. But guess what those buyers are going to do?
Roll in on a sign.
Approach the listing agent.
Yeah. Those buyers are going to call the signs in the yards, and those buyers are going to visit the open houses.
Mhm.
And when they're ready, they're going to be talking to the person that they're talking to, right? So, which is likely going to be the list agent. So that the A buyers that you're working with now are going to sign the agreement. It's not going to be a problem. So you want to become masters of open houses, and we'll have conversations for you to master around that as well, because we're going to have to really up the game. And the same thing with listings. Okay. There's also one other thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the potential changes. And this is something to be aware of, is if this all happens, remember when you put an amount to be paid by the buyer on the BRBC, as it stands today, if you have 2.5 for 3%, and the buyer or the seller rather pays you 2%, the buyer can still pay you the additional. Or if you have 2.5%, well, they can always pay you the additional, but if you have 2.5% and the seller offers 3%, you can get the 3%. Because that's what the seller is offering. That by putting that in the MLS, that is the contract negotiated for that. In the future, if the proposal goes through and you put 2.5% as your fee and the seller's offering 3%, you cannot collect the extra 0.5% as commission. You can only collect up to the amount that is on your buyer's representation agreement. That's part of the new proposal. Okay. A change to be aware of. So we're going to really be honing in over the next several weeks, values and conversations. And we're going to get good at them, and we're going to practice them. Because if you're practicing them and you know them like the back of your hand, you'll feel that you have the value. You'll have the confidence. And then it won't be an issue when this arises. And working on these now doesn't matter if the changes happen or don't happen. That just makes you a better agent. Right? Ernie?
What about going the other way? I mean, if we put 2.5 on the contract and they're offering 2, and we're okay with that. Like, I mean, I don't want to tell my client that, but you can go ahead and accept just the 2 and say, hey, you guys save the 5 or whatever on that and be golden.
Yes,
Or, I mean, I guess you pursue it.
you don't have to. You won't have to.
Yeah, but I mean,
What
I
you
say
can't do.
you could, but then say if they balk on it, then you could say, well, okay, I'm good with the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to you, but we're going to have lots of talk and lots of conversation practice about how to handle all of the situations.
Mhm.
Everybody's working on those things right now. But yes, you would depend and circumstances would depend, right? Did you work with them for 6 months showing them property every weekend?
Mhm.
Or 50 houses and wrote 10 offers before they finally got something? You might not want to give that 5 or that 0.5% back. But if they are cutting it close on closing costs and they've been easy, you might give that back. I mean, that'll be a case by case decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we don't want you to do is start undercutting yourselves and not being professional, right? The other thing that I'll address with this is, here's what's inevitably going to happen. And I'm just going to throw this out there. It was talked about yesterday in one of our meetings. And just in case it's on your minds, has anybody considered the thought that we're going to have, first of all, does everybody remember Help You Sell? Do you know what that is?
What
You
is
heard of
it?
that? Help You
What?
Sell? Have you ever heard of Help You Sell? Okay, so there was back in the day, there was a real estate company brokerage called Help You Sell. And what they did was they helped people
Mm.
sell their houses for super cheap. So what happens is it's really kind of a low end leader, right? Because they'll do an absolute bare bones basic for that cheap price. And then it's like all these add-ons. It got to the point where you could actually pay one of those brokerages more than you'd pay a full service agent. So there were a few of those companies, and you notice that some of you said you'd never even heard of them. Well, that's because they're no longer around, because you can't sustain that business model. But here's what will happen, and it's inevitable. If this proposed settlement happens, and even if it doesn't, this is likely to happen because they're going to come into the conversation. There's going to be people that are going to see an opportunity. They're going to see an opportunity to come in and say, I'll represent you for some stupid, cheap number. Okay. So we're going to arm you with conversation help around that, because those types of companies, they're going to come in, they're going to do a little bit of damage, right? They're going to take a few buyers. They won't last. They can't last. They can't last under that business model. And they certainly aren't going to be doing a fiduciary value at that business model. So just know that these are things that are inevitably going to be coming, and we're going to help you with it. So it's not anything that you have to fear. So what I do want you to be thinking about over the next little bit of time is really seriously be thinking about, what do you want to hone in on in your business? What value do you want to provide? What questions do you have in regard to, how do I handle this or that? Really be thinking about, what are you most nervous about with a buyer's representation agreement today? Or if this happens, what are you most nervous about when it comes to a listing presentation and articulating value and why a seller should offer buyer compensation, even if they don't have to? These are things that I want you to be thinking about, and I want you to bring them here. Okay? Because we want to address them, and we want to make sure that everybody is very comfortable with everything that's going on.
So I'd like to say that as far as articulating the all of that, especially on the seller side, there's no reason to be nervous, because our company and the three guys that did this value too really laid it out there. So when you see value two, you shouldn't be nervous at all. If you go with that script, and it's spot on.
Absolutely. I haven't heard their specific one yet, but I've heard many, and know many that I would say. And really, it's, if the seller wants their home to sell for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle, you're going to be armed with reasons why they should be offering the buyer compensation and why it makes sense. So realistically, where I can't predict the future, I don't think this is going to change how we do business much at all. I don't think it's going to change what sellers offer to buyer agents much. Are we going to have some adjustments? Sure. We're already seeing a few of them, but I don't think it's going to be as big a concern as people think it is. And I think the best thing that's going to come out of this is the buyer representation agreement has to be used by everybody. So the great thing is that solidifies that relationship, that ties you to the buyer to you. And guess what? That buyer representation agreement will have the same weight that a listing agreement now has. Meaning, if you have a buyer's representation agreement signed with an expiration date, that buyer is tied to you and owes you a commission should they go off and do something else without you, just like a listing agreement. So, but it also ties us as agents, just like when we know somebody has a listing agreement, we back off. We don't even talk to them anymore, right? Same thing when we know they have a buyer's agreement. So there's going to be so many protections. It's going to make that so much easier. And so that part I'm looking very forward to.
Are commissions going to be shown until from June or July?
Yeah,
Or
nothing changes
everything
right
is
now.
everything is normal right
Yep.
now? Okay.
Everything is normal. Not one thing changes right now. Nothing changes before July.
Just the BRBC that we need to get signed by the buyer.
Right. But that we should be doing already anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a change. That's something we should be doing anyway. One of your market centers is requiring that now, absolutely requiring it, even though it's not technically required by anybody. I would like to see your buyer representation agreement. So if you guys have buyers that you are actively working with, I want you to email the PC Ask a Coach email your buyer rep agreement signed. Because we should see that before we see an offer. Moving forward, that's going to be required. And one of the market centers represented here today already is requiring it, as should they all soon.
Gary said at family reunion, if you're not willing to do that, you should get out of the business.
Mm-hmm. I logged on right in time to hear him
Mhm.
say that. Yeah, because we're not doing our job as a fiduciary.
Mhm.
Okay, guys, any thoughts, questions, comments about any of this? Not necessarily the settlement, but values, conversations around any of this?
So I saw, I mean, there's tons of things like on Instagram and all these agents trying to be smart and everything else, but I saw a post saying that a lot of those functionary agents or crappy agents are going to become functionary and crappy loan officers now. It just is it.
And close about one deal a year.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Those of you that are really in this to win this,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that's going to happen, and I'm sorry if this doesn't sound as kind as I mean it to, but agents that are just in this playing around that don't really want to do this for real, they're going to go away. Where it's predicted that we're going to lose a lot of agents.
More market share.
That's okay, because those of us that are in this for a career, then, you know, that just helps us. And that being said, we want everyone here to succeed. Okay, so that's why we're going to be bringing you lots of information on this. So you're going to see that in the coming weeks. Your PC team of coaches is going to be putting together probably the end of May, because I'd like to do it before everybody starts going on their summer vacations and things. We're going to be bringing you an all-day Saturday. When I say all day, probably somewhere between 4 and 6 hours, but a Saturday class that is going to be really honing in on how we should be doing our jobs, regardless if the change comes or not. And it's going to be a very valuable day that you won't want to miss. So when we have that on the calendar, we'll get that planned out probably around the second week of April, second to third week, and then we'll have it in the PC calendar so you guys can make arrangements to make sure and be there. It will be in person in the market centers with a coach or a support coach as a representative in each market center, and we will Zoom everybody together. So should be a great day. All right. What questions do you have or things do you want to mastermind around?
Hi Jody.
Hi.
I've been talking with a potential buyer. I was wondering what's like the best way to bring up in the conversation to have him sign the BRBC before I like go and start looking for properties that way.
So the best thing to do is, so have you had the qualifying questions with him?
No, not yet.
Okay. So whenever we work with a buyer or a seller, the very first thing we do is have those the qualifying question conversation. Okay, you can find those questions in the PC toolkit. And remember, they're meant to be done conversationally, not just like a list that you're going down and checking off answers to. Okay, even though they're numbered. Okay, then that's going to help you find the motivation. Then you want to set your appointment for a buyer consultation. Go back. When did we do buyer consultation? Was it 2 weeks ago?
I think it was the beginning of this month. I know that.
If you weren't on, or if you want a refresher, go back to that PC Mastermind video. It's on YouTube and on the Facebook page, and rewatch that, because that will explain in detail what you need to be doing at that buyer consultation.
Okay.
And then at the end is where you get that signed.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Congratulations on having a buyer to work with.
Thank you.
What else do you guys need to mastermind around?
So if you have a buyer that is wanting to buy, but I mean, you can see that they are not ready, and they say, yeah, we're not ready because we're having some other issues. You don't send them with the lender. I mean, but how do you handle that? Like buyers that are not within the range of 90 days wanted to buy, maybe 1 year from now.
I would send any buyer that said they want to buy a house to a lender, because sometimes buyers don't know they're able to buy. They think they can't. And so going to a lender will do one of two things. Either it can show them that they can do it and they may move ahead sooner, or they can help put together a plan of action for what they need to do to be in a position to purchase when they're ready. So
Thank you.
always get the lender involved as soon as possible. That's part of your value. That's part of you adding value to your client.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're right.
To add on that too, because your lender's making, once they've talked to them, they're in their lender's database too, so they're getting not only touched by you, but touched by the lender as well. So it keeps you top of mind because you send them that to them.
Mhm.
So you're doing your 36 or whatever, or quarterly call, and so are they. So, yeah.
All right, guys. So last week, we had the discussion about listing presentations and best practices, and we had such a nice discussion. We ran out of time to talk about any potential objections. So is there a potential objection that you're concerned about and would like some help with around the listing agreement? You guys are very quiet today.
Yeah.
Why so quiet? Does anyone have a listing appointment coming up?
I'm doing a practice one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a listing appointment coming up, how many people have a practice listing appointment coming up or scheduled? I see 1.5 hands. I saw this.
I got one scheduled.
Remember, guys, if you don't have an appointment this week, you need to do a practice appointment. A practice appointment with a friend or family member or another agent is going to help you. It's going to help you get more comfortable and get more confident when you have an actual appointment, and it's going to get you focused on appointments. So you should be having one appointment every single week. There's no excuse not to have one, because if you don't have an actual one, you do a practice one.
Yeah, I'm actually working on that a lot, actually, in practicing. So
Good.
honing my skills.
Very good. Very good.
Jodi, affiliates are willing to sit down with you and let you do practice with them as well. I'm just like there's 2 NHD agents in here, and then another loan officers that's willing to do it.
Awesome. Yeah,
So,
there's no right or wrong who it is, but you guys, You want to know a secret to get referrals? Do your practice appointments with people in your SOI,
Mm.
with your closer friends and family, with your inner circle, because they're willing to help you. They want to help you get better. They know you're not going to push something on them. They've already told you they don't need to do something, right? But the more you're talking to them, and don't make it be the same person every time. It should not be the same person 2 weeks in a row. The more you're doing that, the more you're going to get referrals from them because you're going to be staying top of mind. So that should be an absolute focus. 1 appointment per week, preferably an actual one. And if you don't have an actual one, a practice one. And what about, go ahead.
How about if they tell you that they have something to discuss, that they need to sleep on it before they sign the listing agreement, that they have something to discuss with their partner?
Okay. So you might ask them, oftentimes I find the reason someone isn't ready to go ahead and just get started now is because I haven't answered all of your questions. What
Mhm.
questions do you still have? Or what have I not covered?
Mm.
Sometimes when they say that, it's legitimate because maybe they have to talk to somebody else or run numbers with a financial advisor or whatever the case is that they want to do. But it's very rare that that's an actual objection. It's usually because we haven't answered all the questions.
Mm.
And that actually is something for most objections.
Would you have time to call them right now? We
Yeah.
can call them right now and check on that and see.
The other thing is making sure that all decision makers are present for the listing appointment.
Mhm.
Because you're almost guaranteed to have that objection if usually it's 2 people, so it could be more, but if all decision makers aren't there. So make sure when confirming the appointment that all decision makers will be there.
Good point.
And then if they're still hemming and hawing, I would just flat out ask them, I'm just curious, are you still interviewing other agents?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That
Because
could be.
they may not want to tell you that. And that might be why they're saying that. Good question. Excellent question. Okay, so everybody's going to do a practice appointment between now and next Thursday, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And hopefully you're keeping up with your 10 texts every day and your 10-10-5. Remember, you do that first thing in the morning and then you've got all day for that to work for you. And then you can make your calls, you can do whatever else it is that you're doing for the day, door knocking, whatever else you're doing. But that's a great way to start the day. You don't have to actually talk to anybody to do it. Anyone having success with your texts and your 10-10-5? I'm seeing one head shake. Anyone want to share something? I want to share something that anybody here nervous about doing open houses or think they're a waste of your time?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to see this shaking head. I heard a no and shaking heads no. That's good. I have talked to some agents that feel that way, which is a shame. Val, she was on here earlier. I think she disappeared. She just opened a $1.6 million escrow. You'll see it on the PC scoreboard if you peek at that soon. And she got that buyer 7 days, 7-day escrow cash. She got that buyer 3 weeks ago at an open house.
Oh.
Open houses work, you guys. Not necessarily for the house that you're sitting at, but they work for you to get clients.
Is the best way to get an open house, is it through our market centers?
Yeah, so what you would want to do is search the listings, search the MLS listings for your market center And I would start with anything that is vacant
Mhm.
and text the list agent and ask if you can do an open house. The reason I say start with something that's vacant is because they don't usually have to get seller approval and all that. It's easier.
Okay. Thank you.
It doesn't have to be vacant.
Okay. Jody, I have tried that with my market center. I have been unsuccessful because there aren't that many listings, and the ones that were available, I called the agent and they told me, oh, I have a team. And if no one wants to do it, then I let you do it. So
Okay, well, and that happens, but so just don't reach out to the ones that are listed by teams. Reach out to the ones that are listed by solo agents. But the
too
key
many
is
choices.
be a squeaky wheel and keep asking. Because we have people in this group that have had that work that it was no, 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 no for weeks. And then suddenly, now they're one of the first ones that they call for open houses. So just be a squeaky wheel. It will happen. Be patient. Remember, time on task over time even applies to that. Alrighty, guys. Well, unless you have anything else, I'll go ahead and give you 6 minutes back. Look for the next few weeks. We're going to be bringing you some really valuable content to be able to apply in your business. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jodi.
Jodi.
Thank you,
I
Jody.
think
Bye-bye.